Alright, what's up everyone, I'm Filoki, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Jamal Adams trade that happened last offseason and see if it was worth it for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, of course, it's only been one season since the trade actually ended up happening, so there's still a lot more that goes into who won the trade, if the trade was worth it, than just what happens in one season. Jamal Adams still has an entire career left to play. The Jets have 2 first-round picks this year and next year, so they haven't even been picked yet, and they have their entire career to play. So there's a lot more that goes into if the trade was worth it, who won the trade in the long run, but in the short term, this 1 year, and probably going into next year, we can kind of expect who won the trade, was it worth it for the Seahawks. But before we get into that, we can finally take down the Russell Wilson jersey. Now, I love Russell Wilson, but my God, it's been annoying talking about that whole trade situation. Just, we've had like 2 or 3 days of peace, and thank God it's finally some level of peace, because hearing about all these trade rumors and all this stuff between the relationship of Russell Wilson and the Seahawks has been super annoying. Love Russell Wilson. That jersey's going to go back up in probably like 2 or 3 days, but still, I mean, we finally get a couple days of peace. But now, to take a look at if the Jamal Adams trade was actually worth it, we have to look at what was actually given up for Jamal Adams. The Seahawks gave the Jets their 2021 first-round pick, 2022 first-round pick, their 2021 third-round pick, and Bradley McDougal for Jamal Adams in a 4th-round pick. Now, of course, this is a lot of draft capital for the Seahawks to be giving up. Of course, 2 first-rounders are a lot for anyone, let alone a non-quarterback player, and a 3rd-round pick is definitely a pretty valuable pick to throw in there as well. The Seahawks did give back a 4th-round pick, and they gave up Bradley McDougal, which did kind of free up some money to deal with the whole Jamal Adams contract coming up this year. When the trade initially happened, there were a lot of people saying that the Jets completely finessed the Seattle Seahawks, and they did give up a lot of draft capital to get Jamal Adams, but Jamal Adams is definitely one of the top safeties in the league. He's still really young, so he can definitely continue to grow while being one of the best in the league. So it definitely made sense for the Seahawks to try to trade for someone, because obviously they suck at drafting in the 1st round. I wasn't too worried about getting rid of 1st-round picks. Even if they are kind of in the low to mid 20s, it's still really not going to be that good for the Seahawks. They're not going to get anyone near the level of Jamal Adams. Of course, there's a chance, but seeing as though the Seahawks haven't really had a good 1st-round pick since 2012, getting Bruce Irvin, there's really not too much 1st-round hope that us Seattle Seahawks fans have every year, so I wasn't too upset getting rid of the 1st-round picks. And Jamal Adams, being so young, I believe he's 25 right now, going into being 26 next season, he's still really young. He still has a lot of time to grow. Being as good as he is right now, if we can get him on an extension, then this will definitely be worth it for both sides. But before we talk about getting an extension for Jamal Adams, which is really the main key aspect of if the trade is worth it or not for the Seahawks, I want to talk about 2 things that are kind of forgotten about throughout this whole trade that I believe are kind of important. The first thing that I want to talk about is Bradley McDougal. He's kind of been the forgotten part of this trade. No one really has talked about him because he really didn't give people a reason to talk about him whatsoever. He got traded from the Seahawks to the Jets. They cleared up, I believe, like $5-6 million for doing that move, and he's 30 years old, so it's not like he was going to be getting any better. He's getting relatively old. He's kind of at the last end of his career, especially as someone who's really not a star talent. And last year for the Jets, he played 7 games, really didn't do much. He got a couple tackles, didn't have interceptions or sacks or anything like that, and then he got injured and didn't play for the rest of the year. Really, Marcus May and Ashton Davis were the huge parts of that team when it came to safety. So Bradley McDougal, he really didn't have a crazy spot on that team. Marcus May really showed out last year, so they kind of have their future strong safety. I mean, Bradley McDougal, he just was kind of a piece to get rid of some money for the Seahawks. The Jets just kind of took him because they had to. And the second thing that I want to talk about when it comes to this trade is the 3rd-round pick that the Seahawks gave up. Now, everyone was talking about 2 first-round picks this, 2 first-round picks that for a non-quarterback. Now, of course, 2 first-round picks are a lot, but really, the Seahawks can't use first-round picks well. We haven't drafted great in the 1st round since Bruce Irvin in 2012. Maybe Jordan Brooks can change that, but still, I don't really care about first-round picks. What I'm worried about is that 3rd-rounder that the Seahawks gave up, because the Seahawks really shine at the 3rd round. They flourish when drafting in the 3rd round or the late 2nd area. Now, the 3rd-rounders that we've gotten in recent years that have been really key: Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Shaquille Griffin, Damian Lewis. We also got DK Metcalf, 1 pick away from being a 3rd-rounder. Now, that kind of late 2nd to anywhere in the 3rd round is kind of where the Seahawks are gods at picking good players. And maybe we missed out on an amazing player this year because we didn't have that 3rd-round pick. It's completely possible, and that is where I believe we may have an issue with this trade, because those 1st-rounders don't mean anything. 1st-rounders are overhyped. 1st-round picks are just way too valued for especially the Seahawks, who can't draft in the 1st round to save their life. That third round pick though, man, that could be bad to be missing out on. But what really determines if the trade was worth it or not for the Seattle Seahawks is if we can get Jamal Adams on a long-term extension. Now, Jamal Adams is still under contract for 2021, but I'd assume we're going to be trying to get him under a pretty long-term extension either this year or midway through the next year, because we do not want to wait until he is about to be a free agent and he can possibly leave. I assume we're going to do it this year where it's really backloaded because the salary cap is going to still be weird for a couple years coming off of such a weird season this year, and it's probably going to continue to grow later on, so why not just put most of the money that he'd make later on in his career, later on the contract. I assume that's what we're going to be doing. However, if we cannot do that, then 100% this trade wasn't worth it. I'd assume the Seahawks would not trade for Jamal Adams and give up that much if they don't plan on extending him, so I can almost guarantee they're going to extend him. He played really well this year, and he was injured for most of the year, so he's only going to be playing better. He's still young. He has room to improve his pass coverage abilities, which are pretty decent, but people have definitely shown that, it is a weakness of his game, even if it isn't that huge of a weakness as people say that it is. But there's still a lot of room for Jamal Adams to grow. Really, this entire trade depends on if he ends up getting extended by the Seahawks or not, because if he doesn't, then I have no idea what the Seahawks were doing with this trade, but I do think he will be. Now, assuming that Jamal Adams will be extended by the Seahawks, because that's kind of the only thing that makes sense to happen, let's take a look at what he actually brought to the table in 2020 and what he could end up doing in future years if he does get extended. In the 2020 NFL season, Jamal Adams played 12 regular season games and 1 playoff game. He missed 4 games due to injury, and in the second half of the season, he did play through some injuries, but he still had a really great year. He broke the record for the most sacks by a defensive back with 9.5 sacks. He had 87 total tackles. He had 31 quarterback pressures. He had 14 quarterback hits. He had 11 tackles for loss. He was really just all over the place when it came to rushing the quarterback, playing run defense. In the pass game, that was definitely his weakness, but he did have 6 pass deflections. He allowed around 34 yards a game, and he allowed 3 touchdowns. No, those 3 touchdowns that he did allow were pretty bad. He had 2 of them that were absolutely atrocious that kind of just left the entire side of the field wide open. But, that's definitely something that comes with the territory of him being a very great run stuffer and a great pass rusher. He still needs to kind of grow in the pass coverage ability, but still, 34 yards a game when there are so many great tight ends in the NFC West, like George Kittle, basically the entire Rams offense, and there were some pretty solid guys on the Cardinals as well. But still, he didn't do amazing when it came to pass coverage, but he was good enough. He can definitely continue to grow, especially being as young as he is. He still has a lot of room to grow. He can definitely continue to learn and build on his pass coverage because his pass rushing, his run stopping are already amazing. So if he can build on that pass coverage and become a really good pass coverage guy, he would be unstoppable, one of the top safeties in the league, if not the best safety, if he can get that pass coverage better. And if we could have him for the rest of his career while he continues to get better in the pass coverage game, while he's still already amazing in pass rushing and run defense, then that would be great for us. That would be great for Jamal Adams. And honestly, this would make the trade completely worth it for the Seahawks. It really depends on if Jamal Adams can continue to progress in the pass coverage, maybe get better at the run stuffing, even though he's already really good at that, get some better pass rushing moves. He can definitely get better in all aspects, being as young as he is. If the Seahawks can get him on a long-term extension and keep him for hopefully the rest of his career, or at least until he begins to decline, then 100% this will be worth it for the Seahawks. But this trade is definitely not one that either team kind of finessed the other team. The Seahawks got a great safety that they're probably going to have for a long time, because the Seahawks really never rebuild. They're always going to be a team that's kind of in contention unless they trade Russell Wilson somehow. But they're always going to be a team that are going to be going to the playoffs most likely. They're going to be hopefully making a run in the playoffs every other year, every now and then. But this is a deal that was worth it for the Seahawks. They got a great player to fill the safety spot, which did seem to be an issue the year before. And the Jets, they definitely helped themselves in their rebuild, getting 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick. And yeah, they did take Bradley McDougal, but really it doesn't matter. He's not taking up that much cap. They're not in any cap issues. They just got more first-round picks to use for their rebuild. The Seahawks got a great player, and they're really a team that's trying to win now, so they don't need those first-round picks really too bad, and they don't do good in the first round anyway. So I do think that both teams ended up winning this deal. I think it was worth it for the Seahawks. If we can get Jamal Adams on that long-term extension that everyone kind of assumes that we will, then 100%, there's no question that it was worth it for the Seahawks. We get a great player for the long term. The Jets get some first-round picks that most likely they'll use poorly, but hopefully they'll use well and get some good players that'll actually help them in their rebuild. So I think both teams won this trade. It was worth it for the Seahawks. It was worth it for the Jets. Maybe the Seahawks overpaid, but I don't think it was something crazy where the Jets completely won the trade whatsoever. So I think that both teams won the trade, like I said, and overall, worth it for the Seahawks, worth it for the Jets. Good trade. But with that, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you thought about this trade. Of course, it's been a long time, but after a year of watching Jamal Adams play and seeing the situation that the Jets are in now, I definitely believe the first round picks are going to help the Jets. I think Jamal Adams is going to continue to help the Seahawks, so I think it's a win-win for both sides, way better than something like the DeAndre Hopkins trade. So I definitely think the Seahawks made a deal that was worth it for them and worth it for the Jets. Let me know down below in the comments. Like I said, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new, and with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Have a great day.